Hi, I'm David Hendrickson, and today I wanted to talk to you about measuring change and making it happen. So if I were to ask you, how do you measure change in your organization, what would you say? So today I wanted to talk to you about what is an indicator. We're going to look at three different paths of indicators, or three different types of indicators. And we're going to apply the indicator to your organization. So what is an indicator? Well, an indicator can do several things. It can tell you where you are, which way you're going, how far you are from where you want to be. And an indicator can also alert you to a problem before it gets too bad. And it also can help indicate what needs to be fixed if you have a problem. So indicators are SMART, and SMART is an acronym, and it means specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. SMART. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about traditional indicators and what we call sustainability indicators. And when I talk about sustainability, at least for this discussion, what I mean is looking at integrating environmental, economic, and social considerations, not just looking at economic considerations, which traditionally is what we focus on. So if we look at traditional and sustainability indicators, we could describe traditional indicators as measuring one part of an organization or one area. And that might be, an example might be shareholder profits. Now, sustainability indicators, as I just mentioned, are more making links between the economy, the environment, and society. And so really, when we're looking at sustainability indicators, we're wanting to look at the different connections between environment, the economy, and society. And you can see all different ways, if you take more of a systems approach, to connect the dots, to make these linkages. But unfortunately, most of our institutions, the way that we go about business, and our organizations are really in silos, and we tend to focus just on one topic or one area. So like a traditional indicator might be something like the unemployment rate. It might be the number of companies or the number of jobs, economic stimulant made. Whereas a sustainability indicator is more looking at the number of hours of paid employment, at the average wage required to support basic needs. A traditional environmental indicator might just be something like tons of solid waste generated. But when we look at sustainability indicators, we might find the percentage of products produced which are durable, repairable, and reusable. And a traditional social indicator could be something like how many registered voters are there in a city. Whereas a number of voters who vote in elections would be a sustainability indicator. Or perhaps the number of voters who actually attended the town meetings. So when we're looking at three types of indicators, the first is called a performance indicator. And really is probably one that you're most familiar with. A performance indicator is really a metric to quantifiably assess or control or select a process or event or an institution to carry out a measurement. And usually we think of performance indicators within looking at bar graphs or charts. And we can identify the impacts through the quantifiable or comparable measurements. Now the disadvantage with performance indicators is that it's usually a predefined approach for measuring results. And it often will fail to expose the root causes to different situations. Now an actor-centered indicator, which is the second type of indicator, is more qualitative in descriptions for tracking conditions. And it reveals a deeper understanding about cause and effect of relationships, behaviors, and preferences. The disadvantage with using more of the actor-centered or the qualitative indicator approach is that it may appear to be overly subjective. And so sometimes we want to use both performance-centered and qualitative. Now the third type of indicator is maybe the hardest to understand. It's the pressure state response indicator. And if you look at, if you can think of the pressure state response indicator like you were throwing a pebble into a pond and you see the ripples, the ripple effect across the water. And so we have pressure state response. The pressure is actually the activity that is causing the state. And the state is the condition that already exists. Whereas the response are the actions to change the state. So if we looked at an example, for instance, and we looked at the example of crime, we can say that the pressure is the safety, and the state would be the number of crimes committed. Whereas the response would be usually to hire more police. Now the problem is that we have to ask what's the context and what's the boundary. Because to measure the pressure, or in this example, safety, that's the hardest one to really get our heads around. So it's really important to understand the context and the boundaries, but the pressure state response indicator can really help measure programs and activities that really alter the driving forces. And just as the example with crime, the driving forces might be around poverty, drug use, unemployment rates, rather than looking at the response of just hiring more police officers. So you can see how the pressure state response indicator really gets down to the root cause of some of these systemic issues. So you might also be asking, how do we measure the pressure state response, and when does it end? And really, with the pressure state response, it becomes a cycle, and we can go through the different pressures, states, and responses. And once we get to a response, we can take a step back and think, okay, well, did our responses end up changing the state? And this is often challenging because sometimes it has to happen over many months, even many years, depending on what we're trying to measure. But the pressure state response indicator is one way. It becomes a cyclical process where we're continually trying to adapt our activity, the activity that's causing the state, and then really looking at what interventions we use to change the state. And I'm not saying that this is easy, but over time, if we continue to do this, we can find that we are mitigating or decreasing the different pressures that are being put onto the state. And some things that you might think of doing also are things like benchmarking, to have a standard at the beginning that you can then go back to, a measurement, an initial measurement that you can then go back to see if it has improved or had gotten worse. And by using this system, then you can see the degree of impact that your intervention is making. So if you're an external consultant, you might be asking yourself, well, how can I use these different indicator types, within my practice or my work? And really we want, there are pros and cons with each indicator type, performance-based or actor-centered based, or the pressure state response based. And really we really want to try, as say a consultant going into an organization, to really deepen our understanding and look at the root cause to some of the issues that an organization might have, rather than trying or dealing with it in a superficial manner. And we often will see that you know, an issue is raised and a band-aid is put on it, but then the same issue might fester, might come up again and again and again. So with the pressure state response, because the pressure is the activity causing the state is the condition that already exists, and the response is the action taken. It really, we really have to try to understand what are some of these contexts and boundaries, so that we can get to the root causes to these issues, rather than just giving a response that is not, it's more superficial and it's not going to, it's more short term. We really want to develop an understanding of a deepened response to the issue, and that really means looking at the driving force that is creating some of the pressure within the indicator. So just to recap very briefly here, we looked at traditional and sustainability indicators. Traditional indicators really look at one area, usually the economic area, to measure our productivity in an organization. Whereas sustainability indicators are really looking at social, environmental, and economic conditions, and seeing how they can integrate into finding a more complete, holistic solution. And then we looked at three paths, or three types of indicators. A performance indicator that is quantitative, an actor-centered indicator, which is more of a qualitative indicator or measurement, and then the pressure state response indicator, which is usually used in policy circles, and it looks at measuring not just the condition, but the state and then the response to an issue. So as I said, my name is David Hendrickson. If you want to find out more information about me, you can go to my website at www.davidjhendrickson.com. And I've also written a book called The Sustainability Greenprint. That is really a primer, a handbook on the principles, policies, and players that make up the sustainability field.